Viridian, The Green Guide by Clouds. My head in the clouds, not coming down. Read by Oakshadow5. Chapter 120. Whatever it takes. Summary. Izuku meets 1A. Why is that called the Hell Test? Izuku asked as he put down the pencil. Or was that the warm-up? Nezu smiled. Oh, this is going to be the most fun I've had in years! Izuku looked around the office. Was there any other paperwork we needed to do, or… Nope, Nezu chirped. You are officially a student of UA High School, and all that's left is to give you your uniform. Izuku blinked. Oh, I didn't realize I got a uniform. Nezu smiled a little wider. Of course you got a uniform, Viridian. You are a hero student after all. And don't worry, our support department is already working on an updated version of your vigilante gear so that you're not fighting villains with just a hoodie and some things anyone could pick up at a hardware store. Also, our marketing department is going crazy with glee designing a suitable merchandise line. In fact, they already have pre-orders. You are quite a memorable hero, young Midoriya. Izuku blushed. Thanks. I don't really think… So? Nezu didn't let him finish his self-deprecating thought. The plan was to have you arrive near the end of homeroom so that Aizawa could introduce you, but you finished my test faster than even I expected, which is excellent, and leaves you a bit of time to explore if you so choose. Okay. Izuku gestured to his ankle monitor. This won't start freaking out, will it? Oh, you'll be fine. Nezu waved his hand dismissively. Now, go get dressed. I want to show you the tunnels. Izuku had been mildly concerned about getting dust on his brand new uniform, but Nezu apparently kept the tunnels fairly clean. Plus, even if he did get some dust on it, it couldn't possibly look worse than whatever he'd done to his tie, so he wasn't too worried. So far, he'd found his way to the cafeteria, then a huge concrete training room that probably had something to do with Samantha's quirk, and finally what he assumed was Class 1B, since he recognized some of the students from what little he'd actually watched of the sports festival, but Eraserhead wasn't the one teaching. From the map he'd hacked into before Eraserhead had realized what he was doing and confiscated his laptop, both hero classes were near each other, so he should be getting close. Izuku just kept wondering, occasionally looking through the vent-shaped openings that let him see out into the rest of the school until he heard Eraser's voice. It didn't take long after that to find the right classroom and peek inside to see Denki spacing out during whatever Eraser was trying to teach. Izuku giggled silently to himself and worked on finding the best way to get into the classroom. Sure, he could probably just exit out into the hall and enter through the door, but that would add an unnecessary step, and besides, where was the fun in that? Plus, this way, he could figure out where his classmates were in terms of observational skills and situational awareness, so that he would know where they needed help. If they let him help them, that is. There was a place near the back of the class where one of the squares of the drop ceiling was able to be removed, and Izuku silently pulled it to the side and dropped onto a short bookshelf in the back of the room. Eraserhead sent him a tired glare, but Izuku just grinned, so he rolled his eyes and continued with his lecture without missing a beat. Shinzo saw the look on Eraser's face and followed his eyes to the back of the class, doing a double take when he saw Izuku, but he and two students, who both seemed to have quirks that affected their hearing, were the only ones who had seen him drop in. Izuku smiled mischievously and held a finger to his mouth. The girl with long earlobes glanced toward Eraser before shrugging, probably figuring that if their teacher wasn't doing anything about the intruder, she didn't have to worry about him either. It only took Shinzo and the other guy a minute to come to the same conclusion, and Izuku almost laughed as he turned to return the ceiling tile to its proper place. But laughing would have given him away, so he stayed silent and just sat cross-legged on top of the bookshelf and waited for the other students to realize he was there. He couldn't help smiling when he saw the expression on Kachan's face as he glared at Eraserhead. It was like he knew something was up, but couldn't quite put his finger on what it was yet. Denki was still obviously staring at the window, which Izuku thought was more cute than anything else, but he was still going to have to give him a hard time about it later. Izuku looked around at the other students and froze when he saw Shoto Todoroki staring at him with an unreadable expression on his face. Izuku gulped. Did Todoroki know that he was kinda, not really, responsible for his dad's death? Sure, when they'd met yesterday, Hantok had said they were going to work on Izuku's guilt surrounding all the people he'd allowed to die on his watch, but even if it wasn't his fault, he still had a hand in it. Though, considering what had come out during the investigation about Endeavor's abusive nature, maybe Todoroki wouldn't care that much. He'd probably care a little bit more about his brother having to take the fall for Izuku's interference during the sports festival. It hadn't been Izuku's decision to label Dabi as the main vigilante of the incident, but he really hoped that Dabi was at least somewhat okay with being a hero. He'd have to apologize for that at some point. He gave Todoroki an awkward smile and an even more awkward wave, but for a long moment there wasn't any reaction, which made Izuku half wonder if he was actually going to die today. Eventually, though, Todoroki broke the world's most awkward staring contest and turned back to the front, making Izuku breathe a sigh of relief. Which, of course, was when Kachan finally whirled around in his seat and glared straight at him. Apparently, when Auntie Mitsuki had told him that Izuku had been arrested, Kachan's only response had been, "About damn time." So that was a thing. A big part of him that was still stuck in middle school had been terrified that Kachan would destroy him as soon as he'd learned that Izuku had been accepted to UA, but maybe it was a testament to how much things had changed that he just huffed and challenged him to a spar. It was exactly what Izuku had always dreamed of when he was a little kid, and he still couldn't quite wrap his head around the fact that Kachan was treating him as an equal. But he couldn't quite help hoping that he'd have time to get used to it. And who knew, maybe someday he'd actually be able to accept Kachan's apology for everything that had happened when they were younger. Kachan's glare slowly morphed into a smirk, and Izuku couldn't help hesitantly smiling back as Kachan turned back to the front. Izuku looked around the room again and frowned. He'd been here for a few minutes already, enough to do some serious damage or get a significant amount of information if he'd been an enemy instead of a new student, but still only a handful of his new classmates had noticed him. They would have to work on that, otherwise they would be in for a rude awakening when they actually went out into the world of heroism and started fighting real villains all the time. Eraser seemed to think the same thing, because as soon as he finished his lecture, he sighed deeply.
Shinzo, Jiro, Todoroki, Shoji, and Bakugo, you all get extra credit.
Izuku focused hard on not giving himself away as the rest of the class exploded into protests. Denki had practically fallen out of his seat at the announcement, and one of the students, a girl with pink hair and skin, had jumped to her feet and started yelling. "That's not fair! We've all just been sitting here listening, so why do they get extra credit and not the rest of us?" "Because if I were a villain, the rest of you would be dead." Izuku spoke up from the back of the room, making everyone who hadn't seen him yet whirl around in their seats. "You really need to work on situational awareness with these students, Eraser." Izuku sat back as the class exploded and couldn't help giggling when he realized Eraser was hiding a smile behind his capture scarf. Apparently, his students had needed this lesson. Well, Izuku was always happy to help. Kachan was laughing his head off, and Denki was smiling so widely his cheeks must be hurting by now. But most of the rest of the class was, to put it mildly, losing their minds. No one had tried to attack him yet, though, which Izuku was both grateful for and disappointed at, because they really should be trying to do more than yell, considering that as far as they knew, Izuku was an intruder. So, they had some work to do, but Izuku was more than used to helping heroes. Eraser let the chaos go on for about 30 seconds or so before rolling his eyes and activating his quirk. Within seconds, the entire class was dead silent, and Izuku instinctively reached for his notebook. "Can you feel it when your quirk is erased? What does it feel like? Is it physical or more mental? Do you still feel your quirk, or is it totally gone? What about—" "Slow down, nerd," Kachan yelled. "If you want answers, you gotta wait for us to hear one question before you move on to the next 5, you idiot." Izuku chuckled awkwardly and rubbed the back of his neck. "Sorry, Kachan." "It's a sense of emptiness." All heads turned towards Sue as she answered. "It's weird." "Yeah," Denki grimaced. "Kinda like nails on a chalkboard." "Why are you asking?" Ida asked suspiciously. "Are you somehow immune to Aizawa's?" Aizawa cleared his throat loudly to call the class's attention back to him.
Are you here to learn, or are you here to gossip? Because if you're just here to waste time, I can arrange for you to have a lot more time on your hands. Are you done? Good.
Izuku sat at attention alongside the rest of the class as Eraser glared at them for a moment, then nodded.
Class, this is your new classmate, Izuku Midoriya.
Immediately, a dignified girl with a ponytail shot her hand up. "Excuse me for asking, sir, but how? Shinzo had to prove himself by doing well in the sports festival to even have a chance at getting in, and was only offered the spot because Sagakuri dropped out." "Yeah," a guy with black hair and large elbows spoke up. "It just doesn't seem fair. We've never even seen this guy before."
"And yet, he managed to sneak into our classroom and none of you noticed."
Shinzo smirked and leaned back.
"Plus, from what I heard, he was pretty busy during the sports festival, so I think he gets a pass."
Denki snorted, and Izuku shot him a panicked glare that only lasted half a second, before turning to the rest of the class. Well, I don't really deserve to be here, but I try my best.
Shut up, Izuku,
Kachan rolled his eyes. If Eraser had his way, you would have been here from day one. Plus, you fought more villains than all of us combined, so don't even start on your I don't deserve to be a hero bull. Kachan, Izuku turned to glare at Denki, who was turning red from how hard he was trying to hold back his laughter. Dings, stop laughing! Denki just shrugged. Sorry, Izuku, but he's kinda right. You definitely deserve to be here. And, Sora's totally wrong when he says nobody knows who you are. Everybody here has seen you. Well, videos of you, but same difference. Izuku shrunk in on himself slightly as he watched the rest of the class exchange confused glances. Was it too late to run away? The tracking anklet would be tricky to work around, but if he disappeared into the tunnels, he could probably hide from everyone except for Nezu for long enough to disable it somehow. Did Nezu like him enough to let that happen? Izuku was pulled from his panic by Eraserhead addressing the class.
Kaminari is correct. While you may have never met Midoriya, you have heard of him. Class, meet Viridian, the newest entrant in the Vigilante Rehabilitation Program.
If Izuku had thought the class's reaction was explosive before, it was nothing compared to the reaction at learning he was a well-known vigilante. It shouldn't have surprised him so much, but Izuku still found himself reaching for his weapons like he was preparing for an attack, only to realize they weren't there. He could have told himself that he was safe here, that this was school, not a villain fight, and that his classmates weren't going to attack him at the slightest provocation. But that would be illogical. Izuku had been to school before. He knew being attacked, even in front of a teacher, was still 100% on the table. He shrunk in on himself a little bit. Was UA actually going to be any different? Eraserhead seemed to sense his panic and activated his quirk again.
Viridian has already proven that he is very capable at taking down villains and doing other work normally associated with heroism, but he has yet to prove that he can do so legally. I trust the rest of you to be good examples for him and listen to his advice. Remember, he has more experience than you, so use that resource wisely.
Eraserhead blinked, and Ida raised his hand. Sir, does him being a vigilante have something to do with the fact that he is apparently immune to your quirk? Izuku froze. He really shouldn't have gotten so caught up in analyzing Eraser's quirk, but he'd seen Denki and Kachan and Eraserhead, and they all knew, and Sue knew too, and she still thought he was cool, and he guessed that a part of his brain had just forgotten that other people were around, who didn't know yet, and why had he let that slip? Denki caught his eye from across the room, and he gave Izuku a sympathetic look, silently offering to say it so that Izuku wouldn't have to do it himself. Izuku only hesitated a second before sending him a jerky, grateful nod. Denki nodded and grinned as he addressed the class. Nah, that doesn't have anything to do with being a vigilante. He's just quirkless, so he doesn't have anything to miss. Makes it even more badass when I go full out in a spar and he still puts me on my back every time. Izuku half expected the class to explode again, but they didn't. Instead, they went dead silent, and every single person stared at Izuku like they were expecting him to contradict what Kaminari had said. Out of the corner of his eye, Izuku noticed Kachan tensing like he was getting ready for a fight, and if he didn't know any better, he would have sworn that Eraser was doing the same, but that couldn't be right, so Izuku ignored it. A couple people seemed angry or disbelieving, but mostly everyone just looked confused and a little shocked, which was probably an understandable reaction. That was, until a short kid with purple hair spoke up. Why would they let a quirkless freak in here? Oi! Kachan growled. He doesn't need a fucking quirk to whoop your ass.
Mineta.
Eraserhead cut in firmly.
Detention. And a 5-page essay on quirk discrimination.
What? Mineta screamed and started sobbing. But Eraserhead glared at him harder.
Do you want me to make it 10?
Mineta shook his head frantically and Eraser huffed.
Good, you're learning. Lesson number 1 about being a hero. Never underestimate your opponent. Every villain who has made that mistake with Viridian has regretted it.
Izuku stared at the floor as Eraser let that pronouncement sink in, but all he really saw was All For One. Sure, there had been other villains that had underestimated him, but All For One was the only one that had ever realized Izuku was quirkless. He hadn't lived to actually regret it though. After a long moment, Shinzo groaned.
That is ridiculously unfair. How do you know quirks so well if you don't even have one? You probably know my quirk better than I do, and you've only met me once.
Izuku blushed. Well, I always thought quirks were really interesting, and the science behind them is pretty cool, So I've been analyzing them for a while, and it's really useful for investigations and things like that. I bet an outside perspective helps you see things others can't, Sue croaked. You don't have anything to compare it to, so you automatically keep an open mind. That's pretty cool, Midoriya. Izuku blinked a few times, then found himself actually smiling. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah. Denki let a handful of lightning play across his fingers. Izuku knows, everything about quirks. I'd still be frying my brain on the daily if it wasn't for him. Kachan gave him a teasing look. Is that why you asked him out? Denki turned a brighter shade of red than Izuku had thought possible, and pretty much immediately, the pink girl slammed her hands on her desk. Your mystery boo is a vigilante? Kaminari, you need to tell us these things? Izuku giggled as Denki stammered through an apology. Then he glanced around the room until he accidentally made eye contact with Ereza, who raised one eyebrow and suddenly mouthed, Are you alright, problem child? In spite of himself, Izuku nodded. Sure, he still had depression and problems with being confident with himself, but he also had people in his corner. He'd practiced running away from his problems for so long now, and he'd gotten pretty good at it, but maybe it was time to start fighting them head on, like a true hero. And if there was one thing he'd learned since his first night as a vigilante, it was that he would do whatever it took to save people. But this time, he was including himself. Oh my gosh. The ending is so wholesome. This whole chapter is wholesome. Yeah. So guys, I'm just gonna ramble on here for 5 to 10 minutes. It could very well become 5 to 10 minutes. So you can click off and do other things. I'm just gonna ramble, yeah. So this was the last chapter of Viridian. I don't think it hasn't really sunk in yet, because I've just read it. I think it's gonna sink in tomorrow, because then I'm gonna edit the video and realize that it's the last chapter. So it's been a really long time reading this fanfic. It's been over a year. I really love this fanfic. It's one of my favorites. And it was also, I think, one of my first I read. I think the first Vigilante Izuku fic I read. But yeah, thank you all for coming with me on this journey of reading Viridian, or listening to me reading Viridian to you. And I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Let me know in the comments what you think about this fanfic or the chapter in general. And I'll see you all next week on Wednesday for the next podfic. Yes, I don't think I'll be taking a break between podfics. So a quick question for you regarding the new podfic. What do you think it's gonna be? I don't think I have ever hinted at it. Maybe you can guess in the comments. This was the last chapter of Viridian, and I see you all on Wednesday for the new podfic. Bye!